This is the Vidyuu Essentials bundle, and let me tell you, we have packed everything in here. If you haven't already been added as a collaborator, leave your username in the comments and we'll add you as a collaborator to the world. Keyframe motion. I recommend starting with this design here and then using it to your own advantage rather than trying to build from scratch. Look, the raft came up and look at that pace. That's perfect. We can even jump on it. You could, and if you do build from scratch, build 2 scripts. So let's go ahead and pull out block 1 and then we'll duplicate and scale down just a slight amount. And then on top of this, we're going to need a controller. So to do keyframe motion properly, I recommend creating a little control pyramid like this. We're going to make this non-visible, non-collidable, but this is the control that controls the motion. So this bottom script is going to be keyframes, and then this one we're going to call motion controller. We're going to name this pyramid motion controller. We're going to then attach the script motion control, and now this will be in charge of controlling motion. Now it's going to say animated a lot, but you want to turn this off, otherwise it's eating up a little bit of your capacity. It's really small, so if you don't remember to do that, it's fine. But I do recommend turning it off anytime that gets accidentally turned on. We will be using this again very, very soon, but for now, let's start by building a couple quick key pieces to this script. So the motion controller, when world is started, we will be creating a loop on world start. No, I think we should do it when trigger is entered. I feel like trigger enter is definitely the way to go. It's the better method, so we won't be using when world is started. Our motion controller receives keyframes, and each of these keyframes represents a rotation and a position. And so if we go to our new variables here, we're going to create a vector variable list, and this one's going to be called positions. Okay, so we've got positions, which we're going to set to be a list. And so it's a list of vector positions. So click confirm, then we'll do one for rotations. Okay, so we've got our rotations, make it a list, confirm. Awesome. Now we're going to go back to our events tab and when event is received. And this event's going to be called Keyframe Intake. Perfect. Now Keyframe Intake is going to be received with a single parameter, which is an object variable. And this is going to be called the keyframe. Now a keyframe is an object. We're going to be using a disabled trigger gizmo to represent all of our keyframes. You can then duplicate it to make more keyframes. And then when this keyframe comes in, we just need to add it to the list. So we go to our operators tab, scroll to the bottom, and you're going to find add to list. We're going to create 2 of these. One is for position and one is for rotation. We'll just put here and there. As these keyframes come in, that creates the order. So we want to make sure the keyframes arrive in the order that they're going to be used. We'll get to that. But the first thing we need to do is go get the position and rotation of this object. So we go back to our operators tab, scroll up to object, where we'll find position of object, and we'll also get rotation of object, and that's for our keyframe. Voila, we've now created a list of keyframes on our motion controller. So let's go ahead and close out of this and head down to our keyframe script. And this is the script that's going to be running on each of the trigger gizmo objects. If we head over to our variables tab, we're going to create a new variable, which is a number, and this is going to be called keyframe. So whatever number is here represents which keyframe is it. So we can start at keyframe number 1. We're not going to count keyframe 0. I mean, you could technically use keyframe 0, but we're going to use 1 at a time. And when world is started, we're going to need to reference a new object. So we'll create object, which is going to be called the control object. And then we're going to send an event with delay to our control object. And what are we going to be sending? Well, we're going to be sending that event we just created, Keyframe Intake, not to self. We're going to be sending that to our controller, but we're sending it to the controller with self. So we'll go to our values tab where we can pick up self, put that in the new parameter slot. So now we're sending it with our self as the parameter. The time is not 1 second. We're going to create time by going to operators, grab the divide symbol, put that inside of delay. Then we're going to go over here, grab the keyframe number and divide it by 10. And then go over to our value input where we can get number input. So we're doing keyframe divided by 10. So this means the first keyframe will be sent in 0.1 seconds, the 10th keyframe in 1 second, and this will create order. We can double check that this is fast enough. Theoretically, we can divide this as slow as 2. I'm thinking let's go with 2. This means that 1 keyframe will be intaked every half second. So if you have 10 keyframes, it'll take 5 seconds to load them all in. But people take a while to load into your world, and this all happens when the world is initiating for the first time. Well, if you reset the world, it's going to have to redo it, but I think this is going to work well. So let's go ahead and go with that. And now let's go create our first keyframe. So we go to the Gizmos tab. We're going to pull out a trigger gizmo. Now it's important to know when you pull out a trigger gizmo, the direction facing you is the forward direction, which is really important in what we're doing. So we want to face this one in this direction, and we're going to set our position to be right here in the corner. We're going to slide it up a little bit, slide it over a little bit, slide it over here. There we go. That is our first keyframe. We're now going to open up the properties panel. We're going to set enabled to false, so it's not enabled. Go to the drop down and select keyframes. Now we need to reference the controller. So we'll grab the properties panel by clicking on the top, open up the properties panel of our controller, and then we're going to drag the motion controller reference pill over into the empty slot on our keyframes. Awesome. We've now formed a connection to the controller, so we can log that to the controller. And now we can just duplicate this for all of our keyframes. So we'll just go over here, duplicate this over, and that's right about where I want it. I know forward direction is still facing that way, so we'll rotate this. There we go. Now we can open up the properties panel here, and we know that this is now keyframe number 2, so we'll type in number 2, and then we're going to do this one more time. And I think we can actually save time if we select both of these, slide over here, and then rotate 180. And then we just need to type in 3 on this one, 3 here, and 4 here. Awesome. Okay, so we have 4 keyframes all being loaded to the controller. Well done. That is a great start. It's important to stop reset world if you're going to be using this keyframe motion a lot and creating keyframes. If you don't use the stop reset play button from the script panel here, it will cause some errors. But we do have motion that can be looped. So let's go ahead and start creating our loop. So on our motion controller, we're going to open this up, and you'll remember I mentioned this was going to turn back to animated. We can hit none again and then close out of that. Now back here on the script, we need to determine what object is being moved. So create a new variable, and this is going to be called the moving object. Okay, so we've got our object variable that we're going to be moving, and now we need to create a loop. So we're going to go to events, and I think we want to use a trigger for this, right? So let's go create a new object, which will be called, and we'll call this the start trigger, start. And then when world is started, so we're going to need to bring when world is started down here, scroll to the bottom and use listen to events. This way we can get the trigger enter event from our start trigger. So we'll go ahead and grab start trigger here. Start trigger will be dragged here into the object slot. And then we can now receive when trigger is entered by player, which we can then bring over to here. And when the trigger is entered by the player, we want to start a loop. And so we're going to go up, create when event is received, send event with delay, and then what we need to do is determine how fast is this going to happen. So we'll grab send event to object, and the event we're going to be sending is called loop. So we'll change all these to loop. There we go. And then let's go determine a number variable for delay, number, and we'll set the default to 2 seconds. Awesome. So then we'll drag that in, drop it in the number slot here. So we're going to send loop back to self, and it's just going to keep going through this. Awesome. Now we could create another trigger like a stop trigger. So I think maybe we should do that. So we have a start trigger, and let's also create a object stop trigger. Now stop trigger does need to be connected to a different event. So we can't just listen to events on the stop trigger. So if we go to the events tab, scroll to the bottom, you're going to see connect to event, which we can put underneath listen to events. And we're going to connect the stop trigger event called stop loop. And so this will allow us to connect the trigger enter event to local event stop loop. So then down here we have the loop started. Then we'll go to the top of our events page where we can grab when event is received. We have this stop loop, which we'll need to type in again, being received, and it's received with a player ID just like when trigger is entered. So we need to click new parameter, change it to player, type in parameter PLID, perfect, confirm, and when stop loop is received with a player ID, we then want to cancel sending loop to self. So we'll come over here and grab cancel sending with delay, and we're going to cancel sending the loop to self. Now when stop loop is received with player ID and we've canceled sending the loop, the object is still in motion. right? So we need to stop that. Now to do that, we're going to need to grab the move to over time and the rotate to over time and put that under the stop loop. Now we're going to do this in 0 seconds. We want to make this happen as fast as possible, and it just cancels all the motion. And where are we moving to and where are we rotating to? Well, if we head to our objects, object transform, position of object, rotation of object, and what are we affecting? Well, we're not affecting self now, are we? We are affecting that object that's moving. So our moving object needs to be moved to the position of self and the rotation of self, more or less. I mean, it's not self, obviously, it's the self of the moving object. Anyway, so we're going to stop the motion by using the current position. Beautiful. Okay, so we stopped the loop and we stopped the motion. Now in our loop, we do need to create some motion here, and it is over time. So let's go duplicate these upwards because they're practically filled out, but the position here and the rotation here are wrong. So we need to delete these. The time is also wrong. This is going to be our delay. So we'll duplicate that into there and there. Now, how do we determine which keyframe to go to? Well, we're going to need an iterator so we can go through the list. So let's go create a new variable number called iterator. This iterator number variable is going to allow us to go through the keyframes one at a time. So we go to our values tab, grab set2, drop this right before we send the loop to self, and then we are going to set the iterator to +1. So we go and grab at the very top the plus symbol, put iterator on the left, and then go to values to grab number input 1. Voila, we have now iterated through, we're going to be able to iterate through the list with this loop. But what happens if we get to a value that's greater than what's in our index of keyframes? Well, we need to reset it. So we go to our events, grab an if, put that at the very top of loop, and we're going to say if the iterator equals the length of the list. So if the iterator is the length of the list, we know we've made it through the list. And the list, here it is. It can be either positions or rotations since both of them will have the same length. So if iterator is length of list, we need to set iterator to 0. Set iterator to 0. Important note right here, if you want to start at a different point in the list, you can come over here to your variables tab or even on the keyframe controller and change the iterator to be a different number. So if you say start at 2, you could have this be a number 2 to start at that value. Pretty cool. Now we're going to move and rotate to the position of the keyframe. Now let's go and get the item from the list. So if we go to our operators tab and scroll to the bottom, you're going to see get item from list. So we can drag that into both position and rotation. The number is actually just the iterator. It is simply that. We just grab iterator, drop it in there, done. Then we just take positions list, put it on the right side, rotations list, put it on the right side of the rotation. And with that, we have completed our script. We're going to need to try it out, make sure there's no bugs, but I'm pretty confident that's all we need to do. So let's go ahead and create an object that we want to move. I'm going to do an arrow object. There we go. So we're going to create this arrow object, and that's just going to be kind of a fun way to see which direction is it moving. Now we're going to select these two, group them. It's important to note that the rotation of this could very well be off, and we'll need to zoom into the group and rotate the objects inside the group to get the rotation right. But we'll get to that. Okay, so we've got our grouped object. We'll open up the properties panel, and now we're going to go back to our controller over here. And this is where we're going to reference all of our controls. And so we'll go ahead and reference the moving object here. Now we need a stop and a start button. So let's go create those here. These objects aren't really necessary to be these colors, these shapes, because they're going to really just be a trigger. We're going to go ahead and scale these up to be nice sized and lock this right there. And then we'll slide this over. And what I'd like to do is select them again and then use that to determine the position. And then I'd like to make this also the same size as that. So I'm thinking we just grab this and then scale it down. Maybe turn off snapping. There we go. Wonderful. I'm really happy with that. Okay, so now we just need to get 2 triggers. So we're going to go and grab 2 trigger gizmos out. So we'll grab 1, and then we can just duplicate that there and there. And then we can reference these into here. So this is our play button. So we'll go ahead and put this under start trigger. Works on players. So that's all set up correctly. Go ahead over to our stop button. Same thing here. Just drag and drop that into the stop trigger. And then I'd like to also make sure this is closer to the right size. So I'm going to just snap this. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. There we go. So moment of truth. See how we did? Stop, reset the world, and let's give it a play. Stop, reset, and play. Zooming in here, we can now hit the play button. And now you can see our rotation is very much off. Let's see what happens though. 2 seconds, and it should start moving to the next frame. It does appear there's a bug. Let's find out what. So we just simply zoom into the group. We're then going to rotate this to face downwards, and then zoom out and rotate the whole group back. That should solve our rotation problem. Appears only one keyframe has been received on the controller, which would explain the bug. So let's find out why these aren't sending keyframes to our motion controller. It says keyframe 2 has the motion controller linked in, running the keyframe script. Let's go to our motion controller. When keyframe intake is received with keyframe, add position of keyframe to positions list, rotation. Close out of this under keyframes. When world is started, send keyframe intake to the control after keyframe divided by 2. So if the keyframe is 1, 1 divides by 2 to be 0.5. If it's 2, it divides by 0.2 to be 1. Oh, okay. So you would have thought this would work, but unfortunately it doesn't for a really, really silly reason. So there's a very easy fix for this. So what we do is go into keyframes, and we actually need to have an event delayed inside of keyframes before sending the event to the other object, because you can only have one queued event. You can't have multiple queued events with delay. That's actually a new thing, which is interesting. I love it. It's actually really good. Okay, like this bug is sad, but it's okay. So this event will be called keyframe intake. We'll move this into the keyframe intake, and then this delay event will duplicate up here. And then we're not going to send an event with delay. We're just going to send event to object. So send keyframe intake to the control object with self as a parameter. Delete this one. Don't send this to control, send it to self. Deletes the parameter. There's the delay. And like that, we fixed it. Okay, so what's happening here is when the world starts, we're sending keyframe intake to self with the delay, and then we send the keyframe intake to the control with self when that's received, and that should solve all of our problems. Here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, they're all being received. So stop, reset, and play, and we should see 4 keyframes come in. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Perfect. That is what I'm talking about. So I'm going to stop, reset, remove the debug print from our script, and hit stop, reset, play. Stop, reset, and play. Perfect. Let's give it a try. We're going to hit that play button. Here it goes. 1, 2. Oh! Whoa! Yep, that's pretty cool. I'm not going to lie, that is pretty cool. Like, yeah. That's pretty cool. Say you wanted to change the rotation. Like, I can see how this rotation might be not exactly what you're looking for when it gets to that point. So what you can do is go into build mode. Let's go stop the world. That's the best thing to do when you're working with moving objects like this. We know that this trigger represents the rotation. So if we rotate it 45 degrees like this, and then we come over here and rotate this one 45 degrees like this, we should have much better placement. Hit that green button, wait 2 seconds, it gets into position, and there it goes. Nice. And now it feels a little bit more smooth on the rotation. Yeah, that's pretty good. And my understanding is this does work a little bit cleaner in play mode than in build mode. So you might see some issues in build mode that you won't see in play mode. So consider publishing and going and checking out the world as a test. I'd recommend publishing it as a beta, of course. And then now let's try stopping it. Oh, okay. A little bit of bounce, but it works. And then you can hit start and it'll start back where it was going. And yeah, it's a little messed up if I'm being honest. I can fix that though. If we hit stop, what we need it to do is backtrack one item. So that way it's not skipping to the next item. And so what we do is go hit stop, reset, and then go into our motion controller. And when that stop motion is received, we need to set iterator to be -1. So not +1, but -1. So we'll go grab the minus symbol at the top of our operators. Whew. There's like, you can make unlimited keyframes here. I mean, all you have to do is duplicate. So duplicate this upwards like that, then go and open it up, type in the number 5, hit that play button, give it a few seconds to rotate around. 4. And look at that. It rises upwards and now it rises back down. There is endless possibilities with what you can do with this. We can stop it now. And when we hit play, it's going to continue to the frame it was going to before. It's just brilliant. If you guys have any questions about like this type of topic, feel free to ask. But seriously, this is so cool and so powerful. Enjoy. This is the entire Vidyuu Essentials Toolkit. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And we look forward to seeing you in Horizon. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want a copy of this world, we are giving all of this away. All you have to do is leave your name in the comments, your username in Horizon. We'll add you as an editor to this world so you can import it into your worlds. On to the next one.
Yeah.
Boop, boop.
Thank you so
Bye.
much for watching.
Wait, how did this get here?
Bye.
Bye. Woo, 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 woo. Speed me up, speed me up. Speed me up, Scotty. Speed me up, Scotty. Woo! Okay, these are fun. These are so fun. Especially because you can adjust the speed. That is amazing. I love that. It's like you don't even go that far with one click, but like it's far. Just be sure not to go through the ground.